Hello and welcome to another episode of Talking Politics here at The Hindu with me, Nistula Hebbar, where we unpack the news making the headlines in domestic politics. Uh, Last week has been an extremely, again, news-packed sort of week with historic, unprecedented sort of goings on. Uh, First off, we have had the first tribal woman who has been nominated by a ruling coalition to the post of President of India. That means that her election, Ms. Draupadi Murmu, who is a former governor of Jharkhand and hails from Odisha, her election to the President of India is almost a formality now, and she will be the first tribal woman to be President of India. On Tuesday evening, the BJP held a meeting of its parliamentary board, the highest decision-making body of the party, and endorsed the name of Ms. Murmu, who will have many firsts to her credit when elected president. She will be the first tribal woman to be President of India, the first Odia to be nominated for that position, the first Jharkhand governor who completed a full 5-year term, and at 64, the youngest ever President of India. Facing off against her in the polls is the joint opposition candidate, former Finance Minister in the Vajpayee government, Mr. Yashwant Sinha, whose name was finalized after Nationalist Congress Party Chief Sharad Pawar and National Conference Chief Farooq Abdullah and former Governor of West Bengal Gopal Krishna Gandhi all declined to contest, citing one reason or the other. I will not go into that particular set of events. I feel we have some time in order to have an episode of Talking Politics where we talk about the presidential polls, what are the norms, how does voting happen, whose vote is worth what, and what is the number situation exactly. This week, in fact, we will be talking about a series of events that has threatened to overshadow this pretty historic announcement of the first tribal woman presidential nominee, and that is basically the peril under which the Maharashtra Vikas Aghadi government has fallen. This is basically I record this episode of Talking Politics on Friday, which is June 24th, and even now it's a very delicately poised situation, and therefore I'll just give you a little bit of a backgrounder on this. Basically, the Shiv Sena, one of the constituents of the MVA, the Maharashtra Vikas Aghadi government, along with the NCP and the Congress, it's heading towards a massive split. While the Shiv Sena in the past has split before, once in 1991, when current NCP leader Chhagan Bhujbal left the party with 17 MLAs, and another time in 2005 when current Union Minister and BJP member Narayan Rane left with 12 MLAs. This time around, the banner of revolt raised by Minister in the MVA government Eknath Shinde has been extraordinary, as it is seeking to oust the Thackeray family itself from the leadership position of the Shiv Sena. Basically, nearly 37 MLAs out of the 56 member legislative party group of the Shiv Sena in the Maharashtra Legislative Assembly seem to have shifted to Mr. Shinde, leaving the Thackerays with only the rump of this group, and basically raising the specter of maybe a Thackeray Mukt Sena. Who knows? Basically, we will be looking at questions of who is Eknath Shinde, how did the situation within the Shiv Sena come to this pass. It's quite difficult to pinpoint exactly when the alienation between Eknath Shinde, the Sena strongman of the Mumbai Thane Kalyan area, and the Thackeray family began. Like all feelings that first brew under the surface, the origins of this alienation can be found possibly after the assembly polls of 2019, which the Shiv Sena had fought in alliance with the BJP. They termed the alliance the Mahayuti, but later signed up with the NCP and the Congress after differences with the BJP surfaced, and they formed the Maharashtra Vikas Aghadi government. According to those in the know, Shinde had been instrumental in much of the Sena's success in the Mumbai Thane Kalyan belt. Almost 30 of the 56 MLAs of the Sena who got elected in those polls were from that area. He expected to be the de facto number 2 in the Shiv Sena after that, and also expected his clout to be commensurate to that position in the government headed by his own party chief, Uddhav Thackeray. This is also the first opportunity when a member of the Thackeray family actually took up the chief minister's post and entered electoral politics. Well, all of that did not happen. As Uddhav Thackeray settled into an unfamiliar alliance with the Congress and the NCP, a different set of leaders drew close to him. This is after 3 decades of an alliance between the BJP and the NCP and the Congress. The NCP and the Congress have been historically rivals to the Sena BJP alliance. So this was a pretty much a greenfield situation, as they call it, and a different set of leaders came close to Mr. Uddhav Thackeray during this period, like Anil Parab, Sanjay Raut, and he also depended a lot on his own family, particularly his son Aditya Thackeray, for the day-to-day running of the Sena and the government. Shinde naturally resented this, and it reached a point where, during the last rally held by Mr. Thackeray in Mumbai, Shinde, from being number 2, was relegated to the number 4 spot in the speaking order. This mirrored what he felt was his demotion in the ranks and his giving way to a coterie that surrounded Mr. Thackeray. Mr. Thackeray was also perceived as an aloof leader, leaving the day-to-day running of the party and government to aides and to his own family members. This has been expressed in great detail in a letter by Aurangabad West MLA Sanjay Shirsat, who is part of the rebel Shiv Sena group. This letter is dated June 22nd, and it claimed that despite the Shiv Sena being in power and having its own chief minister, the coterie around Mr. Thackeray never allowed them access to Varsha, the CM's official residence. There was no question of going to the Mantralaya, the letter said, because the chief minister never came there. Mantralaya is the state secretariat. In the letter, Mr. Shirsat said that it was Eknath Shinde who opened doors for the party MLAs to hear their grievances, issues about development works in their constituencies, and the funds which were required for such development works, and the day-to-day problems that had now begun to pop up between them and their current allies, the Congress and the NCP, where 3 decades worth of rivalry had given way to an alliance. I open quotes. Only Shinde heard us out and took steps to resolve all the problems the party MLAs had expressed to him. And the party MLAs were the ones who had persuaded Shinde to take this step of revolt for the rights of all legislators. Close quotes. And while the Shiv Sena legislators said the letter had no access to the chief minister, the Congress and the NCP, which were the real opponents, again in quotes, of the Shiv Sena, were getting all the attention Mr. Shirsat claimed in his letter. He also said that the MLAs were not allowed to accompany Maharashtra Cabinet Minister Aditya Thackeray, the Chief Minister's son, to Ayodhya during his recent visit. This is a particularly egregious issue for the rebel faction. They have been talking about how the Shiv Sena has blundered away from the Hindutva plank because under Bala Saheb Thackeray, this was one of the very strong planks of the Shiv Sena. The Shiv Sena was the only ally of the BJP which had drawn close to it on the issue of Hindutva. And the Shiv Sena had always said that they had participated in the Ram Janmabhoomi movement and were part of the crowd of Karsevaks who were there in 1992 when the demolition of the Babri Masjid took place. So this was a particularly strong point that the MLAs made to demonstrate what they said was the difference between Bala Saheb Thakray's Shiv Sena and Mr. Uddhav Thackeray's Shiv Sena. They said the party had wandered from the fundamentals of its values. The MVA had faced back-to-back setbacks in the Rajya Sabha polls, where the party candidate Sanjay Pawar had lost to Dhananjay Mahadik. And that had happened because the independents who were otherwise close to the MVA government, who had voted for them in the Legislative Assembly during the confidence vote, suddenly switched to the BJP. Now that was something that Mr. Thackeray was just pondering upon when in the MLC polls as well, the party lost 1 out of 6 seats it contested. In fact, on the night that the MLC poll results came out, within that night itself, the plan was made, and the rebel group, initially I think 30, moved to Surat first. The BJP provided logistical support to the rebel Sena MLAs, first by providing security and hospitality in BJP-ruled Gujarat, and later in Guwahati, where the MLAs were moved and its ranks slowly swelled. Currently, they say there are 44, but we don't know. We are basically recording this on a Friday afternoon, 24th of June. There's much to be seen as far as this sequence of events pertains. According to sources in the party, former Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis has been in touch with disgruntled Sena MLAs for the last 18 months. So this has been a slow burn, and the BJP has been extremely aware of which nerve to press. Practically, too, the Sena MLAs elected on seats when the party was in alliance with the BJP were insecure that they would not get tickets under any new electoral arrangements with the Congress and the NCP for the assembly, and earlier than that, in the BMC polls, they wouldn't be able to get tickets for, especially MLAs in Mumbai. They felt they wouldn't be able to get tickets for their people for the corporation elections, and that the demographic profile that elected them in alliance with the BJP would reject them as MVA candidates. Even if they got the tickets for the same seats, the voters who voted for them will desert them, was their fear. Uddhav Thackeray, in all of this, opted to vacate the official bungalow of the Maharashtra Chief Minister Varsha and move back to the Sena citadel of Matushri. He also made a public address via Facebook on Thursday. It was extremely emotional. It pressed all the buttons of the Thackeray family's connection with the Shiv Senics. It was a deeply emotional kind of a connect with the family, and he really played on that. He said he was ready to step down as Chief Minister and as the head of the Shiv Sena, move out of Varsha back to Matushri, but that he wanted his people to tell him that face to face. He basically felt that once they were in the same room as him, he would be able to change his mind because of the emotional connect between the Thackerays and the Shiv Sena rank and file. Well, while governments have fallen earlier as well due to popular unrest and even palace intrigue, what distinguishes this situation in Maharashtra this time is that, unlike past splits where the person leaving was the splinter with the main bulk of the party remaining loyal to the Thackerays, this time around the bulk seems to have gone with Eknath Shinde. This is a problem as far as the MVF government is concerned, but it's a bigger issue when it comes to the existential crisis within the Shiv Sena itself. Interestingly, unlike in the past when Chhagan Bhujbal revolted and his home was attacked by angry Cyriacs, or when Narayan Rane had left the party amid major street protests against him, this time round things are pretty quiet. For political observers, the fall of the MVA government, therefore, is a sidelight to what will happen to the Sena and what will be the fate of the Thackeray's. Will they be able to retain lost ground and get back the party, or leave it for good? This is all I have for you this week. Thank you so much for watching.